Welcome back to another video by me, Max on my Y, and today we are going to be covering the Strv K again. Now, in the armor profile of the last video, I didn't mention a few things, and so I'm going to include them here as well as retell all of the points from that previous video. Now, first of all, let's go over the main things once again. This tank has a downside which I usually don't encounter on many other of my tanks. One of my favorite equipments is enhanced armor. However, on the Strv K, it basically does nothing. It doesn't improve the chance of ricochet enough to justify its use. For example, here, it could still be feasibly blocked, even though it lists it as a penetration. And even then, there's still a pretty good chance. So it's this little tiny bit is the only real difference that it makes on the Strv's turret. So the strength of the Strv isn't in enhanced armor, or in fact in its armor at all. You might say that this tank is very under-armored. However, first of all, this upper plate over here on the turret becomes an auto ricochet at the slightest of angles. So as long as you use even a little bit of gun depression, most shells will simply bounce off of it. And if they load high penetration shells, like let's say a E50M has HESH, so even with that, it still won't be able to penetrate as the armor becomes angled enough for it to bounce. So as long as you're using gun depression, your turret won't be penned. However, if you're not, and you're poking with your turret like this, it will be quite inefficient, and you have to keep this plate on your turret in mind at all times. Likewise, the sides of your turret here, these little pieces other than the mantlet, are also quite penetrable, and you can't really make them any smaller by wiggling the turret. That's one of that's really the main thing I missed, which is talking about this turret. Now, when does the tank actually produce armor? Well, how about as soon as it angles? This thing has 10 degrees of gun depression, and that means that upper plate, yeah, you're not going to penetrate this. Unless, of course, they hit a ricochet like that. So you're going to have to be a little bit careful. You still have to know when and how to use it, mainly a peekaboo style of gameplay. These plates are weak, but look at how quickly they become red. And when facing someone frontally, you generally have enough armor, but again, you still have to be careful, because if they're looking at you like this, they are going to penetrate. With the armor out of the way, I want to talk about something incredibly important with the Strv K, and that is what equipment you should run on it. What I recommend you run on it, and then you can choose yourself, but what I will show you is my strong recommendation for this vehicle. Okay, now that we are here, this is my garage, and by the way, now I have the Strv 3 marked, so this ace comes after the 3 mark was completed. Okay, so what is the strength of the Strv? Well, we realize it's not armor, so what is it? Well, first of all, it's its incredible mobility. It's very fast, but it has heavy armor, and more importantly, heavy hit points. Oh, Maxim, what do you mean? The Strv has 2,300 health. Well, let's take a look, right? You're right, actually. Let's take a look. So, having taken off the health equipment, let's just quickly take a look at the hit points. As you can see, 2,300 hit points. That is on the lower end of heavy hit points. Most heavies have around 2,400. Well, and the upper have about 2,600. Well, what if I tell you that you can make it 2,600 by using both of these provisions called sandbag armor, and then, as we've discussed, enhanced armor does nothing, so we use improved assembly and raise it to 2,622. Now, if you're asking why this small sandbag armor is a better provision than the improved fuel, well, Simply put, it's splash damage. Now, as you know, high explosive shells don't need to penetrate to do damage. Sometimes they'll do a small amount of damage to the outside of, if they just hit the outside of your vehicle. Maybe when you were on low health and you were shot by an explosive and killed, you could have noticed that. You could have asked, why would I die? This HE could never have penned me. Well, usually it doesn't. And that's what this small sandbag armor protects against. In my previous replay with the Stritzvon, I was left with a low amount of health, and technically, if certain events had gone a little bit differently, not having that extra little bit of HP would have made the entire difference, and that is why on this specific tank, I'm not saying many others, but on this one, in my opinion, you should run as much health as humanly possible. Now with equipment, I'm just going to go through this really quickly. Calibrated shells, APCR got a penetration this update, while almost everything else was nerfed, so I run calibrated. Enhanced gun laying drive is really good for that extra fast aiming circle to go in quicker. The supercharger, I used to run it, but I think that it's fine as it is, and I'd rather have the aiming time. And refined gun, I run because of vertical stabilizer. Now, combat stabilization. I'm going to explain this mechanic. I didn't explain it in my last video. I will explain it this time when I show you the battle. Now, because of it, I run refined gun. As I said, I'll explain this specific choice in the as the video goes along. Vitality, improved modules, because this gives actual statistics that actually impact your game instead of chances. As you see, anywhere where it says chance, that means it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what the wargaming gods decide will happen. I don't like to leave it to the wargaming gods. I want to know that I will have 20% increased durability, and I want minus 40% when rammed. I know that as a strong statistic, so I'm running it instead. Improved assembly, we already spent a lot of time talking about it. Enhanced tracks, paired with improved modules, means that you're almost never going to be tracked, which is really important in a vehicle like the Stritzvon or in any other, really. Improved optics, it is an obvious choice. Camouflage net is only something you should run on tank destroyers. Engine accelerator and improved control are interchangeable. I prefer to have a faster top speed so I can get to positions faster, but some people might not like the low hull turn rate of the Stritzvon and choose improved control. Either one of these two options is fine. And I run high in consumables so that the damage per minute when running adrenaline can last for longer. With this section out of the way, let's get into the replay. Now, this is quite a peculiar map because both sides technically work and technically are also a little bit difficult to play, and this is true no matter where you go. Now, for this specific instance, there is a position which I really like, which allows me to get a few shells out into the enemy as they're making the cross to the center position, where some of them like to play hold down, some of them like to play peekaboo, but this position allows me to overlook both the crossing into the corner and this crossing into to these logs. Of course, my driving isn't the best there, but now I poke out, and just as I was about to turn my turret over to look at what was on my side, the BZ-75 appears, which is why I wasn't able to get a shell out. However, turning around, I was able to look and get a shell off into that concept and turn my turret because I knew that there was going to be something that tried to shoot me, and by turning my turret, I was able to bounce a shell that was incoming. Again, just an example of where situational awareness is able to preserve you hit points, and in so doing will help you win the game. Now, something interesting here is I do notice that now that our Sheridan died, the only things protecting this are me and a Jagdpanzer. Now I am able to get a shell off into this 1-2-1, but after this shell into the 1-2-1, I realize that there is no benefit of staying in this position. I'm going to be pushed, I am going to be killed, I need to retreat. Meaning that the only damage I'll suffer is absolutely nothing. Whereas if I'd stayed there, I would have been absolutely killed. However, here I decide that it is okay to use my hit points. After all, I do have them for a reason. I was hoping that this AMX is going to push up with me and help me clear this BZ. However, I was a little bit mistaken in his logical thought process as he goes to flank. Now I decide to try and clear this BZ, and he hits me with another 600 damage shell, which is unfortunate. And what is even more unfortunate is that my shell is unable to finish him off. However, thankfully to our teammates, we are able to. However, now again, I am left in the situation where I am on the front line. And that means I'm up against the E75, against the K91, and against a... I want to say a Minotaur. I don't think it is. But in any case, I'm up against 3 enemy vehicles, and I'm quite confident in pushing this E75 because I know that the 121, that's what the tank was, and the K91 are pushing around to engage our other teammates. And having noticed that the T27 is going to have enough clipping potential to clear the E75, I switch my focus to the 121B. He is able to clear, and I am able to focus the 121 and the K91. With me now up to 4,400 damage, I know that I'm going to be able to clear the K91 with my next shell. I do, and so now rush towards the 121B, as this game is basically a steamroll at this point. The Type 71 blocks me, which means that I don't get to do as much damage as I think I could have. However, it gives me a kill, and for those who don't know, kills give quite a lot of experience points, which contribute to aces, so in a certain kind of regard, maybe it's a little bit better that I was able to get a kill instead of getting more damage. Now, I don't know where the Sheridan is, however, now I do. He's somewhere in that back bush spot right there. Now, unbeknownst to me, he actually makes a run for it, but I'm scared, so I try to back up into this kind of cranny, because next to the wall, there's no way to defend myself. However, seeing where that Sheridan is going, I am now quite safe in pushing towards him. Now, I'd probably die in a 1v1, however, since there's that AMX, I'm hoping that once he kills the AMX, I am able to get 2 reloads out to shoot the Sheridan. That may be a little bit optimistic. I'll have to double check the Sheridan's reload. However, it doesn't come to that, seeing as I am able to get the clearing shot. Actually, no, the AMX is able to get the clearing shot. But there we go. That is a brilliant showcase of the Stritzvan's rapid-fire capabilities and accuracy. There's no real... the only thing tactically-wise that I would say is just how important situational awareness is. Situational awareness allowed me to back out of a position where I would have been killed if I stayed. It allowed me to push a BZ-75 without any risk to myself. It then allowed me to push the E-75 and know when to unengage him to focus on the K91 and 121B. With that out of the way, thank you very much for watching my videos. See you next time. Bye-bye.